Signs of Southland, Sunday, February 13th, 2021. Mr. Grant, we have already done 2 hours of podcast recording today, and yet this episode is the one that's coming out first.
There's some irony to that, I would say.
Recording episodes in bulk is fun. Totally not tired at all. I'm not having a second cup of coffee today.
See,
no, sir.
I have this thing called a 9 to 5, 9 to 6 job, so kind of got to do what we got to do.
Sundays are packed. Also, you have a Super Bowl thing to get to, don't you?
I mean, it's the Super Bowl. However, however the world turns, it feels later than usual because it is, but it's February. But one thing I did want to say in terms of that other content, we should tell them what that is. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for our softball, baseball preview. Well, for softball, it's a first week review-ish too, but that'll be done today. But it's kind of a bigger picture take on softball. And we'll also be talking baseball. That'll drop Thursday. I also just did a little recording with one Mr. Clayton Schruter, he of the author of the new book Loserville. So go and check that out. We talked a lot of tech-specific stuff. Some stuff that we got to add to our little repertoire of understanding history, and Clayton is really excited about that book. So definitely think it would appeal to our audience here as well. So we gave him a little chat. But yep.
Full disclosure, I have to edit that, and I still haven't yet because Jake literally just sent me the audio, so I haven't even heard it, and I'm excited to listen. So that's on the docket for this week. Let's talk about what's happened this weekend in Georgia Tech sports and this past week, shall we? Let's start on the club circuit, your favorite circuit of them all. Let's start with hockey, shall we?
Yeah, that sounds great. In terms of hockey, they did play 4 games split over the last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I have no idea how the one today went. It was against Clemson for the unofficial ACC hockey championship title. But they did beat FSU on Friday to get them that much closer to the process there. That was an 8-3 win over Florida State. And they supplemented that with 2 demolitions, I'd say is the only fair way to put that, of Tennessee the previous weekend. 6-0, 7-1, I think.
Yep. That's what I got in the shot sheet.
Yeah. Well, they're maybe the ACC champions by now. It's been 4 hours since the game was supposed to start, but it's weird. They're definitely, them and men's lacrosse are the 2 teams that are easiest to get live stats from. But in this case, we don't know. Hopefully by the time that this comes out, y'all know, and maybe you can come back in time and tell us.
One interesting thing that I learned about hockey this weekend is I think their conference got hit with the cease and desist by the SEC for calling themselves the SECHC, the Southeastern, I think it's like Southeastern School Hockey Conference, something like that. And they had to change their name to some other different, I'm trying to find the name right now, but it's escaping me. But yeah, that was interesting. I liked watching that legal thing play out on Twitter a couple of days ago.
Aren't most of those schools SEC schools too? Like you'd think.
Yeah, but you can't have SEC is a trademark. The literal SEC has to defend their trademark.
I don't know. I was not on Twitter much this past week, so go figure. But in terms of other club sports news that we do know, we had a men's soccer game this week. It was an 8-2 win Friday night against GCSU. Men's lacrosse had their season opener against Boston College today. That was 7-1 at the half, 10-6. Final. As always, they figure to be pretty darn excellent. And then women's lacrosse also in action, doubleheader today, noon and 2 against UGA and Clemson. But much like the hockey game, have no idea how that ended. So hopefully it was good.
Yeah, it's getting news for some of these club sports is a little difficult, but some of them keep us very up to date. Which we appreciate. We appreciate very much.
We appreciate all club sports, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself.
I appreciate all of them. I just also like updates.
That is very fair, and something that we are required to receive in order to be able to tell people what happened. So makes sense.
In order for there to be news to report on and analyze, you kind of have to, have news to report on and analyze.
I said this for years when I was involved in the club sports scene at Tech. Allowing myself to get on a soapbox here for just a second.
Hold on. Before you go into this, you talk about this like it's been very long, and you were there involved in the club sports scene at Tech not even a year ago.
Yeah, well, don't use facts and logic. But I always thought there should be like some like one page of the CRC website or something where they just like put a result. But I don't know. I don't know how webmastering that stuff works. Anyways,
it's not hard. Let me tell you, it's not hard.
That's about all we got in terms of club. And if we get any additional updates, you bet we'll send them your way.
Well, let's bounce over to another sport you love very dearly, Georgia Tech swimming. They had their Yellow Jacket invite / their senior day. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We missed an episode recording because of Jake's vacation. Yes, go blame him on Twitter for that. They did their senior day. They did all the pomp and circumstance. There are not really results to report from this one. It was just kind of an internal time, internal squad scrimmage for the most part. I don't really know what to make of it. What do you got?
Yeah, I think senior day was actually that Gardner Webb meet that we talked about, because that's basically all those were.
Yeah, probably.
But in terms of the Yellow Jacket invite, they literally didn't post results. Other than
they did good. They played themselves and did good.
I was gonna say, you can't lose to yourself,
but you also can't win.
Yeah, they used to go out to Athens for a late invite there. I don't really know why they don't do that anymore. But it'd be nice to give these kids who are maybe not going to ACCs or something like that another competition. But I don't really have any insight as to the who, what, when, where, or why of why these decisions are made. It just seems like an inner squad with extra steps to me, though.
That's fair. But it is good pool prep for the ACC championships coming up this week at Macaulay. Tell us a little about that and what to expect.
Yeah, that'll be Tuesday through Saturday. Yours truly will try and make at least a couple of the finals.
Mr. Journalist, press credential journalist, who forgot to get me press credentials.
I think us doing a live stream from there would be what we call a rights violation, but that can be caught on ACC Network Extra for the prelims and the finals. Finals will also be broadcast on a tape delay the next morning / early afternoon on ACC Network. So if you prefer like an 8 a.m. time, you can follow up your Packer and Durham with some delayed swimming results. You're
going to be doing it with the Olympics anyway. You might as well.
Might as well. If you got nothing else going on in the mornings, definitely go check that out. They have events split over all the different days, men's and women's. So I do want to highlight Tuesday. I think there's one main relay, but the meat of the schedule is going to be Wednesday through Saturday. In terms of Wednesday highlights, the 2 free relay, that's a big one. 5 free. We have some heavy hitters in that as well. The 200 IM, Tech does traditionally have that as well. There's some diving spread across all the days. I will note that Thursday also has a relay, the 2 free, which is big for us as well, and a couple other individual meets. Friday highlights include platform diving. So if you're really interested in watching the ridiculous, that's always kind of a heart stopper. You also have a couple individual events. The main relay, though, would be the 4 medley. That's a bit of a 400 medley relay. Sorry, I should enunciate. And then Saturday will be your long, meaty one. I think that's 3 hours when the rest will be about 2. But in that, you'll have the mile, the 2 back, 100 free, 200 breast. Kyle Pampudis, big factor in those 200 breasts as well as the 400 freestyle relay, which is traditionally a pretty solid, stellar relay for Tech. So definitely worth checking that out as well. Honestly, Saturday, if you're not doing anything in the evening, is definitely going to be your meatiest event. Bringing home a nice championship meet with the 400 freestyle relay seems to be the classic way to end a big meet. So
they end the Olympics with that one, right? Or am I thinking out loud here?
I think it's just the traditional way to end a big meet. That's how we did it in high school for all of our big ones. It's how a lot of college meets and invites do it. I don't know.
I'm too lazy to go look up the Olympic meet schedule.
See, the four free relay though, that's the one that Phelps and Lezak and Cullen Jones and Garrett. He had the hyphenated last name. I'm forgetting it. It's the one from 2008, the greatest race of all time, to beat the French.
He outtouched the French.
I swear Michael Phelps had another race after that, though, but I can't remember. Go figure. Anyways, that would be your Olympic example.
Very on brand, considering 1, the topic, and 2, that considering the Winter Olympics are on right now. Let's move on to swimming on land. That would be track and field. They had a very travel heavy last couple weeks. They were in Blacksburg and Winston-Salem 2 weeks ago, and then they were in Nashville and Clemson this past weekend. Some of these people are logging a lot of flight miles, and I respect it.
I think given that it's track, it may be more bus miles, but yes, I see what you mean. In terms of the meets 2 weekends ago, Blacksburg, big highlight there would be Shanti Papacosta winning the high jump. You had some great showings in the DMRs as well, the distance medley relays. Tech put 2 on the podium for the men and the women as well, with the men winning the event. Anything from Winston-Salem?
Nicole Fegans was in the JD Campbell City Invitational in the women's 3,000 meters. She finished 9th, 9 minutes, 14 seconds, 13 milliseconds, or 130 milliseconds. I don't know. Math is hard. I mean, she's had a bunch of good showings this season, especially when you get into what she did this past weekend in Nashville, where she improved her own program mile record by a minute or by 1 second and 33 milliseconds, and to finish 3rd. If it was a minute, I'd be we're talking some world record status, but 1 second, I mean, it's pretty significant still.
It's almost like par for the course. New episode.
She keeps cutting time every time she runs it. It's really awesome to see.
Definitely a great example of somebody who was able to take that COVID extra year of eligibility from not having a spring 2 years ago and turn it into some really great results.
Absolutely.
Also, I was going to say, also in Nashville, we had Claire Moritz in the women's 3,000, a 9:24 there, and Harrison Fultz going a 1:51 in the 800 meters. So pretty solid runs up in Nashville.
Yeah, and then to close out the weekend in Clemson, got a couple of top mile finishes. Moore finished 6th in the pole vault, and then you had a couple other top finishes across the place. But really, the top line stuff was happening in Nash Vegas with Nicole Fegans, Claire Moritz, and Harrison Fultz. So good job to them. Good job to all the competitors that participated the last 2 weekends. But now here's the real meat and potatoes of the year. We're 2 weeks out from ACC indoor championships. So what does this schedule look like for them heading into that? Do they have another meet this weekend, next weekend before we get there? Or are they doing the swim style tapering for the next 2 weeks before they get into there?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. The JDL DMR Invitational is in Winston-Salem this coming week in the meantime. And then ACC Championships the weekend of the 24th will be you guessed it, or maybe you didn't, I don't know, back in Blacksburg. So definitely going to be able to revisit the old haunts. I hope they, are pleased with both of those places because we both those places recently. So
I probably still have the exact same hotel rooms, just book the exact same ones.
yep. Hey, we're back. Let them know we're here. It's I don't know if they're big bacon folks, but whoever runs the buffet better know their preferences this time. The hotel free breakfast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about a team that's actually been home for most of the last couple of weeks. Women's tennis, they are ranked 27th in the nation currently, which is a pretty precipitous drop over the last couple of weeks because of some of their recent results. They played number 14 Auburn last weekend. They took a 5-2 loss. No Bilchev for this one. They won the doubles point, and they had a little bit of an interesting lineup where they had Carol Lee playing on court one. But, they just could not overcome Auburn's attacking potential. They were able to put together a win versus Northwestern at 4-3. Their first match play win of the season. Still no Bilchev in this one. I'm not sure if we got any injury update news on her. In versus Northwestern's, they lost the doubles point. And Gia Cohen, in another lineup stack situation, was playing all the way down on court 5 in the singles. So a couple of interesting results here. What do you make of this stretch for women's tennis?
It was a much needed win. Auburn's a really quality program, so tough seeing that being 5-2. Obviously, with tennis, one person being out of the lineup does do a lot of shuffling. So interesting to see what's up there. They did have a week off this week, though. So hopefully, whatever that is can be, addressed well. I don't know, but the win was really necessary. You'd like to see getting the opportunity to be the top 15 team in Auburn, but I also think that this ranking is probably more accurate of what we can expect from this team this year. 12 made a lot more sense as a good job on last year type ranking when we still had Kenya Jones and Vicky Flores than it did as a this year type ranking. But good news is the ACC has some great teams, so great to get good exposure as well as a lot of teams. So hopefully opportunities to get some wins.
Speaking of opportunities to get some wins, there are a couple this week coming up. They will play UT Chattanooga on Thursday and then start next week with Mercer at home. And then they'll open up ACC play the week after that. They'll go to Miami and to FSU, looks like.
Kind of like we saw the year after the Final Four run. So 2019, when we kind of got a couple extra opportunities for wins right at the end of the year. This team is good enough and plays a quality enough schedule and gets enough of the benefit of the doubt for being so good for so long. What they have to do is they got to get to 500. These 2 wins will help them do it. Stay above it. And win, the toss-up type matches. So I'm not too worried. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And in what was very clearly right there, the end of a nice 4, 5, 6 year long era, and you retool and reload for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Men's tennis on the other side of Ken Byers is sitting right around the same place at 29 in the rankings as the women's team is. They have had a bit of a rough stretch the last couple of weeks. They lost 4-3 to Auburn. They went to Columbia and lost 5-2, but won the doubles point there, which is notable. And then today, they kept it close versus Athens. They were winning at 1.31, but ended up taking a 4-3 loss to the number 9 team in the nation. They split the doubles sequence. They won one of them, and then I think Athens took the other 2.
Sorry. Oh. I was confusing with that. That's on me. I did our doubles prep today. By split the doubles pairing, I meant that they split Andres Martin and Marcus McDaniel up. So they paired Martin and Chopra, I think. Let me pull it up. I have it right here.
To be fair, I was also on the right track because I remember very clearly that they were winning on court 2, but the match went unfinished because they had lost on the other 2 courts.
Yeah.
So technically both right.
Yes. But yeah, McDaniel and Chopra on 1 were playing. Basically, UGA has 2 top 50-ish or 50th-ish ranked teams, whereas McDaniel and Martin together is unquestionably like a top 10 pairing. Whereas if you split up McDaniel and Martin, you don't have that firepower on 1, but I think you're kind of hoping for those to, I guess, equivocate into some sort of top 50-ish type thing. And to be fair, both of those matches were fairly competitive. I think McDaniel and Chopra lost a break or 2, but that's tennis. In terms of us saying that they were up 3-1 and then lost 4-3, the one disclaimer I want to say about tennis for those that aren't as familiar is you shouldn't think about that as like choking away a lead or giving up a lead in any sense of the like traditional sporting sense of the term, because
all of these games are happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're all independent events, right? Like UGA didn't see that they were down 3-1 and make a reactionary move to then go up 4-3. Like that's not how tennis works. But it was 3-1 because Tech won the first 3 singles points when McKinney on 6. He finished third of these 3, but he won 6-4, 6-1 against the only person in the singles lineup for UGA who was not a top 105 player.
125.
They're all 104 and higher. So yeah, top 125, 105. Semantics. Keshav Chopra demolished number 3 Trent Bride 6-3, 6-2. And he was the first one done. He also had number 12 Andres Martin, the highest ranked of any player. So good job, Andres. Defeat Phil Henning 7-5, 6-1 on court 1. Where the match really turned, though, were on the 4th and 5th, the 5th and 6th finished matches. Marcus McDaniel falling to Hamish Stewart 7-6 with a 7-5 result in the tiebreak. That is brutal. And then falling 6-1 after that, which, I get it. It's very tough to come back from being that close to the mountaintop. A set means a lot in tennis. And then the 5th or the final finisher, the 6th finisher, Shendong lost 7-5, 7-5 to Tristan McCormick. So even though he lost in 2, he certainly did not make it easy. This is about as competitive of a loss, competitive as of a 4-3 loss you can have, especially against a top 10 team like the boys from Athens.
Are you saying this is a quality loss, Mr. Gray?
It was a quality SEC loss, Mr. Akshay.
Womp womp. Next up for them, they will be at rest until March 4th when they'll face off against Notre Dame. And then they'll also play Louisville 2 days later to open ACC play. Both of those, as written, it seems, are on the road. Let's move on to the Diamonds, shall we? Unless you have something else to say on tennis.
I was going to say this softball review, as in like we already preview and reviewed this, will be more specific. So for those of you who can listen to this and go, okay, now I've gotten it all. No. Much more content for you in the softball.
More content.
Yes.
More content. Listen to it.
Definitely go check that out. Tech is 4-0 after opening weekend. They beat St. Joe's twice and Villanova twice. And they were going to play Marshall today. And that was canceled because of
some sort of accident. We're not really sure what happened. The Ramblin' Wreck article and some of the tweets were light on details, but it seems that there was some sort of bus accident that happened to the Marshall bus on their way back to their hotel from last night's game. I think they played St. Joe's in a game last night. They were going back to their hotel. There was some incident. A couple players were injured, nothing life-threatening or anything. Hope everyone's okay. But just out of an abundance of caution, Tech and Marshall agreed to cancel the game.
Yep.
But like I said, hope everyone's okay. We'll see what comes out of it. I doubt it. I doubt it'll be rescheduled, canceled. It's kind of definitive. There's very definitive language. I'm sure Marshall doesn't have any room in their schedule to come back to Atlanta or us to go up to Huntington. But so that means Tech's next game, and we'll talk about this in a bit, will be versus Mercer on Tuesday. That's the 15th. That'll be a 5 p.m. tip on ACC Network Extra. But before we do that, let's talk about the season opening games. Like you said, that was St. Joseph's and Villanova, two Philadelphia schools down in Atlanta. They know what happened to the Sixers last year, and they decided to come down to Atlanta anyway. Let's talk. What you got for me?
So definitely interesting. I really wanted to see them play Marshall because I'm a big believer in it takes a little bit of time to settle into your groove as a baseball or softball team. I think that's pretty evident. And when it comes to bats in particular, that given that our results that we saw in the first two games were, the 5-2, 5-4-1-ish kind of margins, whereas in the second game it was 11-0 win over Villanova and 8-5 over St. Joe's. That is a sign that, hey, you've seen live pitching that isn't your coach or the pitching machine or your
soft toss or
your teammate in maybe a live practice or whatever. You get the point. That being, it would have at least just been interesting. Again, can't really fault anyone for that. So it would have been interesting to see Marshall. But that being said, the trend that we saw from day one to day two, I would think is fully positive, right? You saw Nelliman throw 2 gems of games. I believe she gave up, 1 run between the two.
One run and 2 hits. I think only like 4 walks total. I don't have the lines in front of me right now, but I can check that.
Yeah, if you're not putting people on base, that is good. If you're not giving them something that they can square up, that's good as well. And then in the other 2 games, Chandler Dennis was a fairly solid starter for both games, and Palmer Pinholster threw some great relief. Again, these aren't Power 5 teams yet. They're not. That's life. So definitely going to have to see how that translates this coming weekend when we get some Mississippi State on our schedule. But, I think our reasonable expectation is all right. Like that they kind of played how I expected it. If that makes sense. I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I think this is what they should have done. Like, this is winning beating the teams that you should, right? And we talk a little bit in the preview episode about how this softball schedule sets up like a Kentucky football schedule, where if the end goal is to make a bowl game, or in softball's case is to make the NCAA tournament, you make that job as easy as possible on yourself with the constraints that are given, right? You can't change the ACC schedule. So in the games that you can schedule, both the non-con and the midweek, you try to make it as easy on yourself as possible by scheduling mid-majors and low majors while still maintaining a reasonable level of strength of schedule. Right. So this is sort of where that starts. St. Joe's and Villanova, like I said, they're mid-majors for the most part. Mercer is also in that mid-major range. They don't see a P5 opponent until Mississippi State next weekend. So it gives them time to settle into the schedules, get into a rhythm, despite seeing live pitching, and go into those 2 games versus Mississippi State and be prepared to see a opponent that is equal or better, right? And really test themselves and hit the ground running. But that's not something they've seen in a while, right? In previous years, one year when the first time the Buzz Classic came back, they faced Washington in the first game of the Buzz Classic, in the first game of the year, and the first 2 games of the year. And then last year, they played a couple of cupcakes and then immediately went into the ACC schedule and played FSU the first weekend. Now they get a little bit more time to adjust and, like I said, get into a rhythm. and really figure out, play with the lineup, figure out what's most effective, and then go into, like I said, that Mississippi State pairing of games prepared and ready to go.
I love, even if a couple of the appearances were, only an at bat or a pinch run or something, but getting 15 players plate appearances, getting 4 pitchers in the circle, that is honestly, I think pretty great to see. This is a team that lost 4 pitchers from last year. Obviously, we did we did get wait, is this, am I looking at the right information? Yeah, 2022. We lost 4 pitchers from last year. Obviously, we did get Melman back. So always good to see more names in the mix, right? That's exactly what these early games are for. One thing, I did touch on this a little bit in the softball, baseball preview right at the end, is the attendance. I think it was posted as right around 350 as an average for the weekend. That is great. You love to see that. And knowing that, a couple of those were Friday, like early games, you want to see them get supported as well. So definitely, if you haven't yet, definitely circle back in 2 weeks or look at an ACC game on the schedule. Very affordable, and hopefully the team's doing well. They definitely respond well to the energy. Softball, I think, is underrated for how energetic of a sport it is. Baseball's a little bit saddled with it being like slow. Not that all of these are fair. College baseball in particular is very fast and exciting. But softball is very energetic and lively, and definitely worth 2 hours of your day. Pretty quick game too.
I also want to, just to drop back to our actual analysis, I want to talk a little bit more about Chandler Dennis, who is a transfer in from Michigan. We talked about her in terms of what she means to the program and the season a little bit more in the preview, and we keep referring to the preview. We'll stop, but it was a really good episode. I think both of us were really proud of the work that we did in talking about both teams. But Chandler Dennis put together, like you said, some really good outings. I think she got the early hook, an early hook that we don't usually see from Eileen Morales. In this one, she wasn't really able to work through some of the issues that she was having in the third inning versus St. Joe's in their second game. She just got the hook at the end of the inning, and Lexi Ray was put in to start the fourth. In the preview episode, I mentioned, okay, well, Morales usually lets her pitchers work out her issues. But in this one, she decided to use a little bit of an early hook, and we're operating at both extremes. In that vein, I kind of would have liked to see her go a little bit longer and see what she's got. She played, I think she went the full 7 in the first game versus Villanova, but I think these types of games are where you get the opportunity to let your pitchers work through some issues, work through some of these tougher in-game situations. And I would have liked to see her get more time here.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. I think it's also a second day in a row of pitching kind of thing. Could just be and stuff like that. I don't want to overanalyze that one thing in particular. Maybe if it becomes a pattern, but with
podcasts are meant for rampant speculation, Mr. Grant.
That's my quote. But exactly. If you look at the week ahead, there's 6 games. Mercer, a pair against Central Arkansas, a pair against Southern Illinois. No, 1 against Central Arkansas, a pair against Southern Illinois, a pair against Mississippi State. This will be a great showing, hopefully, of what this team can start to do. You have a nice mix of, you need to beat Mercer, you need to beat Central Arkansas. Southern Illinois has been a pretty steady program over the past couple of years in terms of good results for mid-major. Turnover has definitely happened there in recent years, so don't want to undersell that. But at least a program that recently has been pretty solid. And then Mississippi State is definitely the jewel of the week. If you're going to watch one game, make it one of those. And hopefully Nelman and Dennis transfer well over to that. Dennis in that second Mississippi State game is probably the matchup I've circled of the week for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as she from Michigan gets used to the Georgia Tech setup, gets used to, playing the type of opponents that Tech does. And we talked about this in the preview. Again, we're trusting or we trust Michigan's talent identification on how good she is, and she so far early returns have been pretty successful, pretty worthwhile.
Yep, I agree. Definitely eager to see them kind of get more into this season. Like I said, would have been nice to see Marshall, but that's life. Can't control that.
More data points helps the analysis. We're an analytics podcast after all.
Yeah, only analytics podcast out there, of course.
Of course. Just a couple more shout outs. Trisha Awald had a really good weekend, batted 667 for the weekend. Emma Kauf, as always, really solid. Jen Salea also really solid. Emma McGinney, newcomer to the team, batted 385 on the weekend. Had a really good first day. Was really impressed there. Sarah Beth Allen had a really consistent weekend as well. Same thing goes. Like really good first couple of days at the plate, really clutch hitting. But yeah, good weekend for Tech softball. And like I said, they'll be back in action on Tuesday, and then also at the end of the week in Starkville. So we'll see them there. Mr. Grant, we're going to go from, trending upwards to neutrality or mediocrity. Let's talk about men's basketball.
I appreciate that. My gut response was, I hope we don't turn this into the bit we did for football, because they don't deserve that. But definitely a tough week. Obviously, I don't think this season off the bat has worked out quite how really anyone had envisioned. I think we thought that it would be a little bit more seamless from last year. And this past week just really feels like more of the same, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I have written in our notes, nothing ever changes. And it's definitely frustrating to sort of, I think they got that win versus Clemson, and you're sort of like, okay, we're seeing some signs of progress. Maybe they've turned a corner. You also had that win versus FSU before that. You're like, okay, well, we're seeing things, right? We're seeing points that they can build off of, but then it's game after game. They're either losing on the free throw line. They are struggling to defend for periods, for pretty long stretches, defend and then score and take advantage of opportunities during the second half and even for times during the first half. And it's the same old story really with them every single game. And it's frustrating. I think frustrating is the right word. They're not a bad team. Like I think the results are poor, but I think you're right in saying they're not a bad team per se. There are a lot of disparate parts that haven't quite fit together in the way that they would like yet. And we may not see them come together in the right way until next year.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I've been halfway to that position for about a month. Of just kind of a general eagerness to see, Mecca, Kelly get more time, Coleman get more time, consistency. It's not good to write off chunks of a year. You don't want to say we're punting or whatever. But I think Tech has some questions to ask about, can we really say that this whole fouling thing and kind of backdating it to our take against Duke or the first Miami game or the second Miami game or whatever. There's no way there's a vast conspiracy to call all these fouls. And it's not something that we're used to experiencing from a Tech team, right? There's always been somewhat of a discrepancy, I guess, but
I think you can say that there's a discrepancy.
There needs to be some sort of there is some sort of explanation that comes back to play better defense, boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some questions you can ask about defensive discipline, and transition defense and that sort of thing. I mean, personally, I think you can definitely call a conspiracy when you're playing in Cameron or in the Dean Dome, but those are besides the point here. I think think you're right in hitting on, well, what is the explanation? Like, is there a tactical reason that all these fouls are happening? Is there just a discipline reason? Like what? Not discipline in the overarching program sense, but the defensive discipline, right? Are you staying in your position? Are you only taking risks when you're supposed to? That sort of thing. And it honestly could be something like it's just youth, right? At a couple positions, you have young players that are working in, getting time, and trying to make a name for themselves, trying to help their team out, and they're just making mistakes, right? And that might be worked out over time, and maybe we just have to give them that time. Like you said, I think it's been a disappointing year, and honestly, I think if we said that we were punting on the rest of the year and just being like, okay, we're going to rotate in the youth and we're going to see what we have, and then we're going to retool for next year. I don't know. It's not tanking, right? Tanking is not the word for it, but it's a roster analysis. They're still going to be competitive, even if they rotate in the youth, like both of us are saying. They're still going to be competitive during the rest of their slate. The ACC is terrible this year. It is awful.
They could still win the conference tournament. Like, it's not out of the picture.
Yeah, they'd have to put together 3 or 4 complete games, which they have. They've put together complete games this season. Maybe not consistently, but they've done it. But even if they said, okay, we're going to rotate in more youth and say, okay, well, we're not going to make the tournament this year, but next year we are going to make the tournament for sure. I'm even fine with that. Maybe that's me coping. Maybe that's me being less positive on the team for sure. But it's not an invalid solution to this problem, personally.
Yeah. I think that it's probably fair to say, and I kind of had this feeling when it was announced that Jose and Moses weren't coming back, but DeVoe and Usher were, that it was going to be a weird year. Because as much
it's
as
an in-between year.
Yeah, and Bubba being out due to injury, right? Like that, you can't, all 5 of those guys would have been the starting lineup, right? And when you're saying, oh, surprise, now no point guard, no big man, of course the team's going to struggle.
Yeah.
Not no, but
and we've talked about this before, right? We talked about this in the context of this is an in-between year. You have simultaneously have the desire to play youth and get the minutes, but you also have top line talent that's still contributing, right? And I think our conclusion was not that it would have been better if both DeVoe and Usher had left, but the results, like the expectations, would be more in check. I think, like we were saying before, a lot of these expectations for this program are built off of not adjusting for the fact that that the team lost 2 major contributors, not only in point totals, but defensive effort and also minutes. They played the vast majority of minutes available at their positions because of the short rotation that Passner likes to play. So if you have all of your major contributors leave, that brings expectations more into check with what is more into line with what is currently the reality. And I think things would be at least a little bit better from a narrative standpoint if that was the case.
Yep. And I think the natural response of some people is like, but what happened to get old and stay old? Well, if you think about it, right now, DeVoe and Usher kind of blow that plan out of the water because they're older than old. You know what I mean?
Their COVID year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's different. And obviously, it's not really as clean either to say, well, and we've seen Devo Coleman steadily get more minutes, but it's not as clean to say like, but if Jordan Mecca had just been plugged in the whole time, he'd be great by now. No, because you need people to have time to improve and see the game and get a feel for it. I firmly believe that. Tech is not a place where you get one and dones, just inherently, right? Also, a guy I'm pretty sure is dead just sent me a friend request on Facebook, so that's weird. Sorry, that completely threw me off my rhythm. Anyways, going back to what I was saying, it's not a plug and play thing. It's not, and it's partially an expectations thing. But if you think about it too, it's not like this team lacks for talent.
Mhm.
It's not like
They
this
don't.
team. It's not like this team lacks for time either. It's just a matter of, figuring out where. And I've said it like this too. I think Miles Kelly and Jordan Mecca are like one or two games, big game or like productive games away from being like, all right, I got it. I feel it. And that's what happens when you're a true freshman who is not a one and done. Like it's tough to step into that role, right? Or to say, hey, Kyle Sturdivant, the most like beloved player from Georgia Tech in the last like decade. Can you just go be him now? Go be Jose. That's not possible. And quite frankly, based on Jose turning himself from like undrafted, unknown for the most part to like darling of NBA Twitter in the last 2 weeks, I wouldn't have it any other way. Good for him. Go get that bread. He makes the program look better. That shows what Josh Pastner and his staff have done for them. And just like the staff of or the success of Kogi or Lammers overseas, or James Banks coming back to the G League, or Moses finding some time in the NBA, but G League too. Like, hey, Tech's a destination. They're making quality players who've gotten better and can continue to get better.
Mhm. Absolutely. Let's transition over to talking about the other side of McCamish Pavilion. The women's basketball team has been in action this past week. They have had a very interesting week in the way, if you get my parlance. They beat Duke. They grinded out a win versus Duke, which was really good. Bad loss to NC State. Bad loss to Virginia Tech. Near bad loss to Clemson. Near egregious loss to Clemson. Let's be clear. That Clemson team
would have been like catastrophic. Let's be real.
Yeah, there were some stinky losses last year near the end of the year. That would have been this would have been stinkier or on par with the Boston College loss from last year.
Again, this team beat Clemson 3 times last year. We very nearly lost 2 of those. I will put that out there. Their coach knows our scheme. They know
she knows it well, and she had a player go for 30 plus today.
I have the stats pulled up because often we do some clicking around in the background during the podcast, just bringing you into the inner workings. But I knew this was one where I wanted those no searching. I just needed to know. But in terms of Clemson's points, it is worth stating that if you eliminate Washington from the game, the score is 92-44.
She had how many points now? It was 30 plus, but I don't remember the exact part.
She had 40 points, was 16 of 23 field goal shooting. 16 of 23. What? Is there a magnet in the ball? 3 of 5 from 3, 5 of 6 from the line, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, only 2 fouls, only 1 turnover.
And just kept giving her the ball in every possession. That's the only reason this worked.
And yet her plus minus was minus 11.
Plus minus is a bad stat.
I know, but still, wild. Yeah, so
that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Tech gave up what 30 points in the third quarter. I think that's what it was.
It was not great. They're winning.
It was not a great defensive or offensive performance versus NC State, Virginia Tech, and Clemson. Even if Clemson was a win, none of these 3 games were great performances whatsoever.
Tech gave up 30 points in the third, and they also let a 17-point lead wilt into an 8-point lead going into halftime in the second. So
and then got just demolished with that 30 points in the third. Yeah. And Clemson was up by 4 heading into the fourth. I think that's what it was. And then it took a pretty sizable grinding effort to get it to tied at the end of regulation. And then Lorella Kubaya just turned it on in OT and clinched the win. So at the end of the day, a win is a win, but this is not the type of I think we both would have been very upset if they had lost this game.
This podcast might have been just an hour of me screaming if they had lost this game. 3 in a row, including a loss to Clemson, is pretty bad. Virginia Tech is unheralded as a very good team. They are the Tech, NC State, and Louisville are the top 4 teams in the conference right now. Does it grind my gears? I listened briefly at the end to the radio broadcast. Does it grind my gears that Virginia Tech fans were chanting overrated at us? Yes.
They are also ranked. Hold on. They're also ranked. I don't want to hear this. They are ranked.
Yeah. So love that. Love that for us.
That's garbage.
No, Virginia Tech's like 17 or 18-6. They're doing just
fine. They're receiving votes.
Well, now they'll receive some more votes. Congrats, guys. But coming up this week, you have Notre Dame at home on Thursday at 8 p.m. on the ACC network. It'll be the pink game. Notre Dame is, I think, 5th in the conference right now, something like that.
Notre Dame, it was basically, at one point, it was like Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and Tech were right in that bubble for 3rd.
Oh, Notre Dame in the conference. Or 5th.
Right.
Sorry.
So, I mean, there's all still, they're all
5th.
stacked up in that space, right? That 3 through 5 space.
Yep.
And no one's been able to break Louisville, and no one's been able to break NC State. So it's just gonna kind of be a dogfight through the end of the season to see who actually ends up with that 3rd seed at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. The main thing I would also add is, given that Notre Dame is 5th and we're currently tied with them, gonna want to win this one. Just putting that out there.
In soccer parlance, it's a 6-pointer. Get it done.
Yeah. You go up 1 and they go down 1 and you get the tie break. That's one you need to win. They had
trouble with Notre Dame last year too. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think they played Notre Dame earlier this year.
We played Notre Dame twice on the road last year. That was so weird. COVID is weird. But yeah, Notre Dame is 3-4 on the road while being 7-0 at home in conference play. So definitely want to take advantage of getting the home draw on that. And then we also get revenge against Miami. That loss to them looks worse and worse all the time. They're 6-7 in conference. Overall, they're 13-10, which isn't terrible, but again, you gotta
get some of the ground that you gave up back here.
Yeah. Tech wants to stay top 4, get that double bye. Every game less you have to play in the conference is that many less you have to go through to get where you want to go. So yeah, definitely would be.
It's late in the season. It's late. This is the time to clean up shop here and just grind out some W's and secure your seed. I mean,
also, if anyone was overrated, it would have been Duke, who's 6-8 in conference and 15-9 overall. Redirect your anger, Hokies. Redirect them at Duke, as what should be.
As God intended. Just to talk about the schedule one more time, it's Notre Dame and then Miami, both at home, and then Florida State, and then at Florida State, and then at Wake Forest, and then it's ACC tournament time. So life comes at you fast here. It's just 2 weeks.
It's
2 weeks, and then we're done.
I wish I had my strength of schedule numbers up because that would be very interesting. But
Florida State and Wake Forest, those are two. This is a 3-1. You go 3-1, and you're golden for the 3rd seed situation, I think.
Yeah,
depending on what VT does.
Yeah, you got to win the Wake Forest game. Florida
and
State,
FSU.
That'll be on the road. Miami, you got to win the Miami game.
Got to bag Miami.
And then you got to win. Just win the games. Just win the games. That's the easiest way to do it.
Just win the games. Easy. It's so easy. Just win.
Just win, baby. Win.
It is Super Bowl Sunday, so technically that is relevant.
That's why they call me Jake Al Davis Grant. Actually, they don't. Please don't do that.
Please don't call him that on Twitter. Actually, please do call him that on Twitter. That'd be funny. That, I think, kind of wraps up our women's basketball talk. That wraps up our episode for today. We've recorded, like I said, 3 hours of audio. It's Super Bowl Sunday. 4 hours of audio. Christ. It's Super Bowl Sunday. The big game starts in 11 minutes. And probably not. And talking about commercials, and then
6:30.
I hate it. Freaking NFL doing MLS kickoff times. You really hate to see it. Do you have anything else to plug before we head out for the night?
I mean, listen to the interview with Clayton. That was a lot of fun. Great talking to him. Go buy his book. I did that. I'm waiting for it to get here. He said he's talking to publisher tomorrow. So hopefully they get Amazon their stock, but you can buy it direct through University of Nebraska as well. If you have
it's
any
also
questions,
on BNN.
Yeah.
I also looked it up on Barnes & Noble.
If you have questions for us for a future show, for any of our delightful collaborators as well, let us know. Looking to get, our wonderful folks from any of our partner organizations, podcasts, other places in FTRS on the show. So if there's anything in particular that interests you, whether that is talking to our softball correspondent, our UNC correspondent, or anywhere in between, Robert on football numbers, let us know what you want to hear, and we'll get everyone back on. If you have any questions for us, from the rumble seat at gmail.com, FTRS blog on Twitter, podcasts wherever fine podcasts are sold, and you can find me and I guess not Akshay. He doesn't really publicize that, but Jake Grant 98 on Twitter as well.
Some other things. Baseball starts at the end of the week. We didn't really talk about them in this episode, but we did in the preview. They start at the end of the week versus Wright State. That's on Friday at, I think, 4 p.m. That's a 4 p.m. tip at Russ Chandler. So go listen to the preview. Come out for baseball. Come out for softball. One slight correction. I may have said that the actual SEC sued the SECHC and gave him a cease and desist. I don't actually think that's the case. Looking at how they did this announcement, it looks like a bunch of these teams are not from the SEC, so they decided to rebrand to make all those teams feel more at home and not just outsiders in a faux SEC conference.
What are they rebranding to?
College Hockey South.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. They joined the College Hockey Federation, so that tracks.
All of that tracks. All that sounds good. Mr. Grant, I will see you next week.